We're continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim on Siman Kuf Nun Aleph of Mishna Berura. Seif Aleph, we're at the very end of Seif Aleph. We started the halachot of Kedushat Bet Knesset, and the Mishna Berura writes, again, Shulchan Aruch commented on the fact that for Gdolei Ha'ir, when you have great people, great Talmidei Chachamim, or great people in town that are not necessarily the greatest Talmidei Chachamim, but they're involved people, that everyone gathers in the Bet Knesset, Shekol Bnei Ha'ir Mitkabesim U'Ba'im La'aspido, that you could do in the Bet Knesset. A hesped of that caliber, a eulogy for a person that is Echad Migedolei Ha'ir, could be done in Bet Knesset. Now, either that or a Gedolei Ha'ir alive, one of the great people of the town that is alive, and he lost one of the family members of his. Like the Mishna Berura writes, Gedolei Ha'ir shemet krovo shel hagadol u'machmatzeh ba'im rabim la'aspid. Because of the respect of this gadol, this person who is known to people, who the people owe him a debt of gratitude, everybody is coming to wish him condolences and so on. So you need a larger place. Machmatzeh ba'im rabim lehesped v'chol sheken k'shahesped hu al talmid chacham, and kol sheken if one of the talmidei chachamim has passed away. The Gemara in Shabbat says, Hamit'asel behespedo shel chacham ra'oi lekovro b'chayav. A person has to be very careful when we have one of the talmidei chachamim, one of the gedolim that passes away, to certainly make sure that a hesped, the proper eulogy, is held for them and everyone attends to it. So therefore, that for sure goes without saying, that if you have a hesped for talmidei chachamim, that's something that you could have in the Bet Knesset as well. Now, even if you have a deceased person who's not blood related to this important person, but the person who's eulogizing is one of the Gedolim. So everyone is coming for the kavod of the person. That, imagine if Chacham Obadiah would want to make a hesped on someone. Even if that person was not as important in the vacuum, but because one of the Gedolim is coming to give a hesped, that would be, of course, mutar as well, because they're coming for the kavod of the Talmid Chacham. Radia writes that in such case he could hold the hesped in the Bet Knesset, but the Ben Ish Chai disagrees. The Ben Ish Chai says that if the person himself is not the Echad Migedolei Ha'ir or one of the Talmidei Chachamim, he cannot use the Bet Knesset for their hesped. Now, if the Ben Ish Chai also writes that if the person himself is not a Talmid Chacham, even if he was Baal Ma'asim Tovim, he was Yerei Shamayim, he was a tremendous person, he was a great Jew, learning Yerei Shamayim, doing mitzvot and Ma'asim Tovim, and a lot of people are coming to give the hesped, still you cannot do the hesped in Bet Knesset. It's considered a disrespect for Bet Knesset, because this is only a heter for Talmid Chacham, which you have an obligation to be maspid. You have an obligation to, as we mentioned, the Gemara says it's an obligation on every single individual to eulogize and to participate in the eulogy of a Talmid Chacham. And therefore, you could do it in Bet Knesset. Anything short of that, the Ben Ish Chai is not happy with. And Harvadia is a little bit more lenient, as we mentioned, that any Adam Kasher, even a Isha Kashera, even a woman that was a special person by objective standards, the community relates to them as special people. You had someone like Mrs. Or Rebbetzin Henny Machlitz, special people that they have hundreds of guests every Shabbat, and the whole world knows. Special people, even though they're not Talmidei Chachamim necessarily. Chacham Obadiah would hold that's mutar to hold a hesped in in the Beit Knesset. Now, at the same time, Harbadia says that nowadays hesped is not necessarily to make people cry. In the time of Chazal, hesped would be, saying things that would bring people to tears. Nowadays, hesped is usually divrei Torah. It's an opportunity to present people with inspirational divrei Torah that makes them appreciate life more, and so on and so forth. So that's for sure, that's mutar, because you're doing it as a hitorerut, an inspiration to tshuva, and so on. That's mutar. Now, how about bringing the coffin inside the Bet Midrash, inside the Bet Knesset? Is that mutar or is that not mutar? So Chabad writes that already is not mutar unless you have not even a regular Talmid Chacham, unless you have someone that's considered gaon, someone that's considered by objective standards and by subjective standards one of the special people in the generation, not just any Talmidei Chachamim. We have Baruch Hashem thousands of massive great Talmidei Chachamim, but not everyone is leading Talmid Chacham. You have a leading Talmid Chacham. You have in our yeshiva, the Rashi Yeshivot, they would be brought into the Beit Midrash. She was a Tzal, Ruderman. When he was eulogized, the coffin was brought into the Beit Midrash. The same was with Rav Weinberg, Rav Kalevsky. And again, that's, I think, the minhag of the yeshivot is that the Rosh Yeshivot, when they are eulogized, their coffin is brought into the Beit Midrash. But a regular Rebbe, for instance, in yeshiva, even though that they may be a tremendous gaon and a very special person to the yeshiva and to the public, still the coffin would be kept right next to the Beit Midrash, outside the Beit Midrash, and the eulogy would be held in the Beit Midrash. So that's what Chacham Badia seems to say as well. But the minhag Harabadia acknowledges is that a Talmid Chacham that has been marbitz Torah in a certain place, when you have a eulogy in his place, this is his place. He was marbitz Torah, even though that by objective standards he may not be a leading figure. The minhag has evolved that Talmid Chacham that has been marbitz Torah, has been teaching to tens and hundreds and thousands of people. The minhag is they bring the coffin to the Beit Midrash in their place to eulogize them. Arvadi is not really happy about that. But says, they have what to rely on. You don't have to stop them necessarily from the minhag. But that's basically the gist of this halacha. Now, says the Mishnah Berura, Ari HaKadosh was so careful, and this has become the platform for many of the Mekubalim, that are Obadia Hadaya, the Kaf HaChaim, and the Ben Ish Chai, and so on. The Ari HaKadosh did not even speak divrei musar in the Beit Knesset. He was so careful, היה נזהר מאוד, שלא לדבר בבית כנסת, רק תפילתו. He would only daven in the Beit Knesset. He would not even stand and give divrei musar. Why? Because חלילה, חס ושלום, אפילו דברי מוסר לא דיבר, פן יימשך ממנו דברי חול. Maybe from that one thing is going to roll into another, and it's going to come to mundane talk. Right? So you see a level of carefulness beyond our capacity, maybe to a great degree, but that's what the zirud of Ari HaKadosh was when it came to Kedushat Beit Knesset. But Ramor Chaliyahu writes that halachically speaking, is mutar to say divrei musar. Of course, even Arizal did not hold that's asur, but Arizal did not do it himself. It was one of the chumras, personal chumras of Arizal, because maybe chas v'shalom you're going to come to speak mundane talk. Now, for us to minimize and to be careful in divrei chol, the starter level, not to bring a phone necessarily that's on to the Beit Knesset. And nowadays, Baruch Hashem, majority of the Batei Midrash And Bate Knesset, they have a charging station outside that you can lock your phone, right, and put it there. That's the beginning, because the distraction that it comes from it, and so on, and it's a challenge for all of us. Sometimes it's a bigger challenge for Rabbanim than it is for Baalei Batim, because they have to be on top of answering questions, or sometimes making sure the minyan is running properly, and get minyan on time, and so on and so forth, depending on every kihila and every place. It is something to be careful, and to make a point that when people come to you, you could just, if you think it's important, you walk out with them. If it's a place and time in tefillah that it's mutar to walk out and talk, and this creates a point that you're not disrespectful to them, you're respecting them, but at the same time you're sending a silent message that I'm not comfortable speaking in the Bet Knesset, I'm not comfortable doing that. You make a habit of that, or you just notion to them that you can't talk, or you have all this placeholders, the siddur cards, so to speak, that it has on it. So, I'm davening, I cannot speak. Something of that nature helps little by little create a culture in the Bet Knesset that we don't talk in the Bet Knesset. And then it becomes a role model for the kids. They grow up with the second nature of shul is not a place for talking. Shul is a place that you come to learn, you come to daven. If you can't daven, you can't learn, you go outside, you play, you don't come to shul, you stay home. And that's something that on our level, we don't have to be machmir like the Ariya Kadosh, but we have to do something, and that would be the level that we will be attaining. So that's the Mishnah Berura. Now, it said that you could say Shmuah. The Shulchan Aruch says, reading basically the last piece of Sif Aleph over here, the Ikra Me'at, if a person wants to come in to call somebody, you're not coming to Shul to daven. You're coming because you need to call somebody out. So what do? The Shulchan Aruch said, Yikanes v'Ikra Me'at o yomar devar Shmuah. You should come in and learn a little bit, or say something of learning, and afterwards you call him out. So the Shmuah says the Mishnah Berura, Perush halacha or Mishnah. You say one halacha, or you say one Mishnah, and that would be sufficient as well. Now, the Kaf HaChaim writes that the language of the Gemara is mashma, that lechatchila you should say dvar halacha. If you don't know how to say halacha, then you could say Mishnah. So one of the Mishnayot that is said by people in the morning after Birkat HaShachar or whatnot, you can say something of that nature that you know by heart, and that would be sufficient as well. But l'chatchila says the Kaf HaChaim, you should say halacha. Halacha could be, simple as he may be. Now some people say pasuk. Many people say Asher Yeshua B'techa Od Ya'u Chasela. Why? Because it indicates that Yosheveh Betecha, even if you spend some time in Bet Hashem, that by itself is a fortunate zchut that the person has to be in a makom kadosh. So some people say a pasuk. It shouldn't be. It's disrespectful to come to shul to just call somebody. For your purposes, your personal purposes. So if a person is calling his friend, the Shulchan Aruch says you should first learn and then call him. So it says the Mishnah Berura on that. Shouldn't do the other way around. Call him and then sit down and say a little Mishnah or a little halacha. The Yenireh, the Amirat Divrei Torah Urak Tafel, because then it seems like the Divrei Torah is Tafel, and the main purpose is you're calling your friend. So that's why you should not do that. Bebet Knesset, the Sefer Rashid Chochmah was one of the students of Ramak, Moshe Cordovero. He writes that when you call your friend, also you should not be yelling his name from the other across the room in the Bet Midrash. You should not be speaking loud in Bet Midrash. That's part of Mora Mikdash, reverence of Mikdash, of the Bet Midrash or Bet HaKnesset is you want to call somebody, you go up to them, you quietly speak with them. You don't do Baharamat Kol, you don't use your outside voice, so to speak. You use the library voice, like a Bet Knesset voice, Lavdil. That's what you use in Bet Knesset, because again, the part of the kavod of the Bet Knesset is like a Bet HaMelech. If you go to the White House, Lavdil Alf Avdalot, you don't yell. If you've been ever there, you see how everything's quiet, orderly, respectful, the way people are dressed, the way people talk, the tone of voice, the choice of words. Well, choice of words maybe has kind of gotten messed up, unfortunately, in the past generation. But it used to be that anything of a resemblance of foul language would not be used in that area. It would be a different way you talk. You don't bring your language from outside into the White House or into the courtroom. That's something of respecting a place. Is part and parcel of respecting the place. Now, if you can't do any of those, says the Shulchan Aruch, or yishema v'achar kach yetze, or you say a pasuk, right? You read the pasuk yourself, or you say to one of the people or children in the Bet Knesset to tell you a pasuk, right? And otherwise, if you can't do any of that, you just wait a little bit, you sit a little bit, and then you leave to call your friend, because that by itself is a mitzvah. Shenemar, as it says, Ashrei Yoshevei Beitecha Odi Chasela. So the way you stay is Kedei Hiluch Arba Amot. Says the Rema, Veshiura Yeshiva Kedei Hiluch Shne Ptachim. Shne Ptachim. Shne Ptachim is Hainu Sheishe Shiur Hiluch Shne Ptachim. Dainu Shemona Tfachim. It's not even Arba Amot. Stand corrected. It's a Shne Ptachim is every petach is for Tfachim. 4 Tfachim is a Shiur Petach. Shemona Tfachim is the shiur of 2. Shemona Tfachim is a shiur of 2 petachs, 2 openings, and that's sufficient. So you don't have to stay for a lot. You sit for a second or 2, and then you're good to basically stand up and go call your friend, and that concludes the first saif of Shulchan Aruch over here. Let's quickly just do the second saif. Also, yesh omrim shema sheshaninu b'kedushat bet midrashot. There are those who hold that the kedushat bet midrash that we spoke about, rotzeh lomar shel rabim. That's only a public bet midrash. But if you dedicated one room in your house as a bet midrash, as a library, that's where you learn at home. Wherever you're at home learning, that's the makom miyuchad. Aval yachid hakovea midrasho bebeto lesorko elo kedusha kol kach. That doesn't have the same level of kedusha. Aval imikdish bayit lesorech rabim. But if you dedicate your house for people to come daven and learn, so even though that's your private house, but every Shabbat afternoon, or maybe a few times a week, you have a shiur, people come, sit, learn, it's a bet midrash, but it happens to be in your house. Then, of course, that's considered, it says the Mishna Berura, a bet midrash, a regular bet midrash of Rabim. Afiru im en mitpalelim sham. Even if you don't daven ever, it just public comes there to learn. Yesh alav kedushat bet midrash. That is considered the kedusha of bet midrash as well, and you have to be careful with it. So that basically is the Mishnah Berura. If you have a public bet midrash in your house, would be the same thing as Cheder Talmud Torah for kids, right? You have a classroom that's miyuchad for Talmud Torah of kids. The Ben Ish Chai says that also is considered like a bet midrash, the kedusha of bet midrash. Chaumadia writes the same thing, or the Tzion says basically the same thing as well, but he just adds that those are the Talmudei Torah that are privately owned. But if you have like a public ownership of the city over them, then you can't be makdish something does not belong to you. that's not necessarily, or you have like an after school in a public school that teaches Torah. It's b'derech kavua every time you do, still it's not considered. Or a bet knesset, for instance, that is one of these like new things that they have in hospitals, that they have like a prayer room. Now, a prayer room by itself is very questionable because it's not necessarily a shul, even though that it has an Aron Kodesh and a Sefer Torah in there, but it's a prayer room for bet tefillah lechol ha'amim. Like it's considered a bet tefillah lechol ha'amim. That of course is a little bit different in general, but also is because it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the government basically. It's not necessarily considered a bet knesset. So that's something to be mindful as well. Now, how about learning if it's a privately owned cheder? So you go into the classrooms of a regular school that teaches Torah, right? A blat room of a yeshiva. You go to a yeshiva and the cheder shiur, right? So that's according to this kedushat bet knesset. You want to go in the seder, during the seder, you need to talk on the phone. So you want to go somewhere? Can you go to the blat room, the shiur room, and speak over the phone? Divrei chol, you want to speak in those chadarim. So the Ben Ish Chai writes in that same tshuva in Rav Pa'alim that that's asur. You cannot do that. It has mamash the kedusha bet midrash, and you have to be, if you want to study, you go taking college courses in the afternoon, and you want to study in those rooms, not necessarily so pashut. If you want to speak on the phone, not necessarily so simple to be mekel. It's not something that a person should ask a question when it comes to this. These are common things that happen in yeshivot, especially those who do have college studies as well, and people need to review or study for tests and so on. This becomes something of a question that has to be asked for every specific case by itself, depending on Tanai, not Tanai, things that we're going to learn in upcoming Seifim and Simanim Bezat Hashem. So that concludes Seif Bet, and Bezat Hashem will continue this in the days to come. Chazak u'Beruch.